too early. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 5:29? 5:30. Okay. Amanda, can you take roll call, please?
Chair Patricia Trouth.
Here.
Commissioner Chris Duncan is absent. Commissioner James Gross is absent. Commissioner Glenn Johnson.
Present.
Commissioner Ron Medoc.
Here.
Commissioner Paul Templin.
Here.
And Commissioner David Thiele.
Here.
Okay, can you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, Amanda, do we have oral communications tonight?
Yes, we have one speaker tonight. We have Lisa Provenzano.
Hello? Okay. Good evening, commissioners and staff. I will preface this with, I live off of Quail Gardens Drive, directly across from the Botanical Gardens. Communicating from several people, especially when I look at the whole title of your commission, mobility, traffic, safety, all those things need to be considered with each of these. The roundabout that was put in at the entrance of the Botanical Gardens and the farm school, I'm not sure what happened there. I had a meeting with Abe in either October or maybe the beginning of November because it was going to be the show that was there, but they had stopped working on the roundabout. And he said the problem was materials. So in retrospect, I'm looking to see if maybe that's why it was built that way. Angular, was there not enough space? People ask, the two questions are, what is that? And is it done? When I tell them that it's the roundabout. The kids on the e-bikes love it because they can get a little air off of it. And so, and the two little kind of jumps, they get a couple of them on the way. Anyway, that's a problem. That's a problem that will be a problem with any kind of evacuation plan, which that's not the only thing, but overall, there cannot be a traffic or mobility of any kind evacuation plan made for the 500 homes in Encinitas Ranch above, for our 29 homes there and the different developments, and the 1,044 units that are going on Quail Gardens Drive. Please do not put a roundabout, or do not give your input not to put a roundabout at Kristen Court. I know you live on Kristen Court, and it's been awful. Presently, at least the workers can't park on your street anymore. They park on Quail Point and Paseo de los Robles. These homes have, so when you're considering things, the traffic anywhere, you know it's awful on Encinitas. There's no parking on Encinitas, Lucadia, or Quail Gardens Drive, and there are going to be all these people, but there's only 1.6 parking spots per unit. That counts for 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. I don't know where they're going to park. Across the street, what's the plan for the businesses? They're pretty full now when you go over, whether you go to physical therapy or yoga or a dentist or whoever's over there, because the workers are parking over there, and they're parking on Moonlight and up by Chins. But is that really fair to the people who need to get a parking spot? Anyway, the whole thing is, if you can communicate with all the other commissions, it just seems that it's not happening. Not so much on your part. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. We have special presentations. Our mobility manager, Nick Buck.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, and members of the public. I'm Nick Buck, the city's mobility manager. This evening, I'm pleased to present you with an update about some of the non-infrastructure work that the city has going on. All right, first I'll talk about education. I like to update about education efforts in these monthly reports. We're really proud of the work that we've been doing with our elementary, middle, and high school levels. We've got education offerings that really address appropriate amount of education for those school levels, including assemblies at the elementary school grades, with end of school year activities for on-bike education. At the middle schools, we offer in-person classes, really a good level of education. And then for the high schools, we offer in-person classes and also assemblies and webinars as those come up. To date, we've had nearly 850 students complete those classes. That's actually the 3-hour course. We've had almost 2,000 people attend one of the different types of classes that we've offered in the last 4 years. The city offers weekly mobility tips and mobility-related project updates on our city newsletter. So if you don't yet subscribe to that, be sure to, because we're always putting content in there weekly. And to come, we're starting to work on an awareness campaign to remind and inform youth and their parents about the legal classifications of e-bikes and what the rules and laws are about their use. Want to kind of an update on our microtransit study. We last talked about that, I think, at the report early, I think in February. And in the winter months, we kind of hit a roadblock with our microtransit study and getting it kicked off. Our federal grant funding toward that study was frozen. We got encouraging news last week that we should be able to resume that study in the coming weeks or month. So looking forward to getting into that. As you can see on the screen there, some good reasons why we would look at microtransit which is an on-demand or scheduled rideshare transportation service using technology to provide flexible routing and scheduling. Some of the benefits there to consider are increased accessibility, improved efficiency, enhanced convenience, reduced environmental impact, and first and last mile and short trip solutions. Again, this study will be working with a consultant to inform us about what a good type of program could be for Encinitas, what the approximate costs and scope and scale of a program like that would be, and then to identify funding strategies and ideas for operating and which vendors are out there doing what. So we intend to kick off that study in the next month or so, and we'll certainly report back to the commission with progress in that study. Tonight we'll be talking about, we'll have a presentation about our Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. Just want to note that having an adopted Comprehensive Safety Action Plan better positions the city to compete for federal and state grants and for grants for local safety improvements and to apply to achieve recognition as a Vision Zero community. Tonight we'll hear about the safety vision within the plan. We'll get a kind of a rundown through our roadway safety analysis. We'll talk about our outreach and engagement efforts in that plan. We'll define our priority corridors, and we'll talk about our implementation strategies identified in the plan. Then coming up, a lot of fun stuff in the month of May, both locally and nationally. May is known as Bike Month. In Encinitas, the city will host a Bike Anywhere Day pit stop at 1010 Coast Highway 101. That's that morning from 6:30 to 9:30. The point of Bike Anywhere Day is to encourage people to get to wherever they're going by bike, whether that's school, work, or just getting around town. So we encourage you to get out on bike that day and come visit us at that location at 1010 South Coast Highway. And then a big event coming up for us on May 18th is our Ciclovia Encinitas event. This will be the 5th time that the city has put on that event live. We had one virtual year during COVID, but we're excited to have that event this May. A lot of activities for folks to enjoy, but mainly to get out and enjoy their downtown at a different pace on foot, bike, or any people-powered transportation. So we invite you to get involved in those events coming up, and that's my report for this month.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the Climate Action Plan.
Okay, good evening, commissioners. My name is Ryan Lampkin. I'm the city's sustainability analyst. I'm joined by Crystal Nahara, the city's sustainability manager, and I'm excited to present to the commission the draft climate action plan update. So my presentation will include a brief background on the climate action plan, the city's emission inventory, projections and targets, the emission reduction measures, climate vulnerability and adaptation in Encinitas, and implementing and monitoring the climate action plan. So to start with a bit of background, what is a climate action plan? A climate action plan, or a CAP, is a comprehensive roadmap for addressing climate change through goals and measures that aim to reduce community-wide greenhouse gas emissions while supporting the city's broader sustainability goals. The key term in this definition here is community-wide. The climate action plan is not just to mitigate the city of Encinitas as an entity's emissions, but it's to reduce the entire city's greenhouse gas emissions. And so the city's first climate action plan was adopted in 2011 and then updated in 2018, where it committed to an update every 5 years. Additionally, the climate action plan update is seeking to realign priorities and identify enhanced greenhouse gas reduction measures. And we're also seeking to align with some of the latest legislative drivers, such as AB 1279, which is California's carbon neutrality by 2045. Law. And so with the need to update the climate action plan, city staff released a request for proposals, selected a project consultant, and have worked over the last year to develop a draft climate action plan, which is now available for public review. And you can see all of the different chapters in the plan here. So now I'll go over the greenhouse gas emissions inventory, projections, and the proposed targets for the CAP update. So the 2018 CAP utilizes 2012 as the emissions baseline, and for the current CAP update, we're updating that to be the 2016 emissions inventory. So an emissions inventory is essentially a snapshot in time where we look at the total greenhouse gas emissions that the community generated in any given year. And so the inventory, we also use this to set all of our targets against and base them off of that total number of emissions. And so in 2016, from all of these various emission sectors identified on the screen, Encinitas saw approximately 381,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent emitted, with the largest source being on-road transportation from internal combustion engine vehicles. And so the consultant then developed an emissions forecast, which goes out to 2050, and you'll see that gradually over time, if nothing is done to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, they will gradually increase. However, there is federal and state action being taken to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which you can see in the red and the blue, with the blue being from federal and state vehicle fuel efficiency standards. And so just below the red portion of this graph in the gray is the remaining emissions in Encinitas. And this is where the city is seeking to further reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so the 2018 CAP set a 2020 and a 2030 target. You can see the 2030 target in green, that green dot there. And for the 2025 CAP to align with state legislation, we are proposing a new 2030 target and a 2045 target, which are to be 40% below the 2016 baseline by 2030 and 85% below the 2016 baseline by 2045. And so now that I've gone over the proposed targets for the climate action plan, I'll talk about how we actually plan to achieve those targets by going over our emission reduction measures. So the climate action plan identifies 7 high-level emission reduction strategies, and they are closely mirrored to the sectors that are identified in the emissions inventory. Those include building decarbonization, which seeks to see a citywide reduction in natural gas consumption, renewable energy, which seeks to see an increase in renewable electricity consumption throughout the city, water efficiency, which seeks to see a reduction in water consumption in Encinitas, clean and efficient transportation, which seeks to see increased alternative transportation and low to zero emission transportation throughout the city. Zero emission equipment, which seeks to limit and restrict the use of gas-powered landscape equipment. Zero Waste, which seeks to see increased recycling and composting throughout the city. And then Carbon Sequestration, which aims to plant city trees to actually take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And so under the different strategies are the more specific emission reduction measures. And each of these have a quantifiable emission reduction potential by 2030 and 2045. And so I wanted to highlight the measures in Strategy 4, which is clean and efficient transportation, as they're the most relevant to this commission. So that includes CET1, which is to implement the city's active transportation plan. CET2, which is to implement a flexible fleet program, which is essentially that microtransit program that Nick Buck had discussed earlier. CET3 is to require transportation demand management programs for new residential, non-residential, and major redevelopment projects. So this is would essentially require that these large developments work to incentivize alternative commuting to their development. So that could come in a number of ways, whether it be like actually providing financial incentive to employees to commute alternatively, installing bike racks, bike lanes at their sites. There's a number of ways a TDM program can be implemented. CT4 seeks to see a citywide reduction in vehicle miles traveled by 2045. CT5 aims to improve traffic flow in the city, and this would be done by retiming traffic lights and installing roundabouts throughout the city. CT6 and 7 aim to see residential and non-residential EV charging stations installed. MCET1 aims to transition the city's fleet to be zero emission. MCET2 would seek to implement a city transportation demand management program for city employees to encourage them to commute alternatively. MCET3 is to install public EV charging stations at city-owned sites. And so now that I've gone over some of the transportation measures, and if you have any questions on the other measures, we can go over those at the end. You could see here that based on all of their emission reduction potentials, if they're fully realized and the measures are fully implemented, we will be achieving both that 2030 and 2045 target. And so now that I've gone over how we plan to take climate action, I wanted to quickly talk about climate vulnerability and the why as to why climate action is important in Encinitas. So the CAP update utilizes the Climate Vulnerability Assessment and Adaptation Framework, which was conducted for the safety element update in 2023. And in this analysis, it found that under a mid and high emission scenario, by the end of the century, we could see a number of these different climatic events taking place, which would impact Encinitas. And so the city is already being impacted by some of those things, such as, the coastal erosion. But we are taking actions such as the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers project, which puts more sand back on the beach. But if these high emission scenarios and those climatic events and the increase in, their scale is expected to take place and actually does occur, additional actions would be required to mitigate those impacts. And so the CAP update is reaffirming the adaptive actions which were approved in the Climate Vulnerability Assessment and Adaptation Framework. And so now I'll talk about implementing and monitoring the Climate Action Plan. So these are the 5 key components to implementing the plan, which includes administration and staffing. The Sustainability Division here at the city cannot solely implement the Climate Action Plan. It requires every city department to work to implement the CAP. And of course, financing and budgeting is extremely important to do so. And before the Climate Action Plan update goes to City Council, a full cost-benefit analysis will be conducted and included in that report. And then implementing all of these measures is, of course, important, and reporting the status of implementation to the public, and including the public in taking climate action to actually meet the actions that are identified in this plan as a community-wide climate action plan. So that concludes my presentation, and I will take any questions or comments. Thank you.
Amanda, do we have any public input? on this item?
No, we don't.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to hear from the commissioners. If they have any comments on the climate action plan?
Commissioner Johnson here. I'd like to comment that this is a noble plan, and I hope we can see it through to an implementation.
Yeah, I was just curious on the table that you had, clean and efficient transportation. It didn't really show any numbers in terms of, how, for example, CET4 reduction in miles driven. Do you have a target for how many miles you want to reduce, or?
Yes, we have some of the different performance metrics, is what they call them, by 2030 and 2045. So they're not on the slides here, so I
Right.
could save some space, but they are in the document in Chapter 3. You could see all of the different performance metrics and greenhouse gas reduction potential if that performance metric is met. So
Sure, and I'm sorry, so this is on like the City of Encinitas website somewhere?
yes, yeah.
Okay. All right. Is it possible for you to send me a link to that or something like that?
Yeah, I think we can work to make
Yeah,
that
is that-
happen. Yeah.
Asking too much? Okay,
No.
thank you.
Go ahead.
Hey, do we have an overhead? Can I use the overhead? Yes. Thank you. Is this the order? That's the order. I'll go first. Yeah, great. Sure. So I guess I'll ask a question to begin with. Do you think that this is established science?
Yeah, yes, excuse me. Yes, this
Okay.
plan is certainly backed by science.
All right. I'd like to read a statement by the 2022 Nobel laureate in physics.
Okay.
His name is John Clauser. He went to school at California Institute of Technology, undergraduate. And then he went on to Columbia University in New York City for his PhD in physics. And he's done some amazing things in physics, and when I read them, I don't even understand what they are. They're very complicated, I'm sure. And he's a member of an organization called Clintel. Have you heard of that? Clintel is an organization, it's worldwide. It consists at this time of 1,900 scientists and people who have established careers in relevant fields. There are 2 Nobel laureates, including Dr. Clauser. There are professors from geophysics, petroleum, physics in various universities, medicine, there are airplane pilots, there are petrochemical engineers. These people are all very accomplished in their careers. They say that there is no climate emergency. And they have a number of other things to say, but I'm just going to read what Professor Clauser said. The popular narrative about climate change reflects a dangerous corruption of science that threatens the world's economy and the well-being of billions, with a B, of people. Misguided climate science has metastasized into massive shock journalistic pseudoscience. In turn, the pseudoscience has become a scapegoat for a wide variety of other unrelated ills. It has been promoted and extended by similarly misguided business marketing agents, politicians, journalists, government agencies, and environmentalists. In my opinion, there is no real climate crisis. There is, however, a very real problem with providing a decent standard of living to the world's large population and an associated energy crisis. The latter is being unnecessarily exacerbated by what, in my opinion, is incorrect climate science. I very seriously doubt that anybody in this room has the credentials to contest what these 1,900 people are saying. If anybody does, they should come forward at some time in the future. Maybe this isn't the right time. But until they do, I don't think the city of Encinitas should spend one thin dime on climate change. I don't see this as any kind of valid science. If you want to make those arguments, if you feel up to that, then you should. But otherwise, I would recommend that the city council abandon this. Thank you. Oh, there were two other people whose bios are on those papers over there. One is a professor emeritus in Professor of Earth, Atmospheric and Planetary Sciences from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. You've probably heard of that institution. The other is William Happer, who's a professor of physics emeritus, Princeton University. And I would recommend, they wrote a very interesting 30-page letter, I've read it, to the Securities Exchange Commission because there was a bill put forward to do just this kind of thing that you're promoting here. They've signed this letter that the 1,963 other scientists have also signed. And basically they're saying the same thing. These people have done this their whole lives at the top institutions in the entire world. Why would Encinitas be saying, no, 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 we know this is not, you're all wrong. So, thank you very much.
Okay, any other comments from commissioners?
Commissioner Johnson here. I'll disagree a little bit. We've seen climate changes. We've seen weather patterns that are unusual. Rainfall where it hasn't been and rainfall not where it usually has been. Something is changing about the climate, and we want to be cautious to not make things worse.
I did have a question or two. On page 5, you talk about legislative drivers. Could you just give us like a 30-second overview on those 4 items?
Yeah, this slide here, right? So SB 32 is a goal that the state has to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 40% below 1990 levels by 2030. And so we're aligning with that target that the state has, or that state law. And then I kind of mentioned it with AB 1279, that's the statewide goal of carbon neutrality by 2045. And so that aims to reduce 85% of anthropogenic or human-caused emissions by 2045. And then the remaining 15% would be, sequestered through trees and other working lands that like capture carbon. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Do either of you know how much carbon dioxide there is in our atmosphere, percentage-wise?
I don't know the exact amount offhand. We focus on Encinitas specific emissions.
We have the same percentage in Encinitas as everywhere else. It's 1 atmosphere. It's 0.04%. Carbon dioxide is a trace gas. It's very important for plant life. I don't think we need to get rid. And if you look at a graph historically, we are at a low point on our carbon dioxide graph. Quite low, almost historically low. The idea of sequestering a trace gas that has 0 effect on climate, or almost 0 effect, makes very little sense to me.
Excuse me, Chair. I do like, because we have Crystal here and we only have this only once or twice a year, I want to ask Crystal to clarify what we want, because I totally appreciate the comments, Commissioner. I'm not sure if it's related to what Crystal presented. These are like very, very higher level, some political statements, some scientific statements. I'm sure neither of us are qualified to respond to those. I just want to make sure Crystal gets the opportunity to receive comments for what she's here tonight. So if you could clarify one more time why we're here tonight, and those higher level recommendations that you have, that came directly from council to her. She's not doing this on her own. She has a direction from the city council. This document, her role, her position, her staff, they're all supported by council. Now, if commission's recommendation is to scrap this position or this whole cap, that's obviously a position of commission to send some sort of a letter to city council. We as a commission do not want to review this. We don't care about this. This is not something that we agree with, and Crystal wouldn't have to do this. But the fact that she's here and presenting something, I would appreciate if we provide her the support that she needs for this document that's in front of you. If commission holistically feels like this is not something that you like to consider, we don't need her here. We can just say, hey, this is not something that we're willing to review. We don't want to comment on this. We don't agree with this. That's it. Just because we have public here, they want to, take their item. I kind of feel like we're getting distracted with like super high level policies that really not my team's responsibility or Crystal's for that matter. So if you could just clarify what this document is and why we're here, and then we'll hear a commissioner's input. Thank you.
Yeah, so our division was directed by council to address climate change through a climate action plan, through measures that can focus on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So we have had a plan since 2011, and this is the second major update of that plan. The basis is on state, federal, and international science, and we don't, like Abe mentioned, we don't focus on the science. We take the large body of science that has been conclusive, and we apply our planning level effort focused on Encinitas to aim to reduce greenhouse gas emissions aligned with that science. So the focus tonight and the questions and comments we're interested in hearing from you are related to the plan itself and what measures are being proposed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by the city. So what types of projects, programs, and policies are being proposed to aim to reduce emissions. So if you have specific questions or comments about those specific measures, that's what we'd be happy to answer tonight.
Okay, are there any other comments from commissioners?
Well, yeah, I just, to be honest, the presentation was pretty high level. And so, it's really hard to say too much more than that without going through the details, which I'm hoping to do when I get the link. Are you expecting us to approve this at this point, or are you just sort of presenting something for us to think about?
Yeah, so this was just a presentation, and if you had questions, clarifying questions, or any comments at this time, you could, and this is an opportunity to make them, but if you'll have an opportunity, to review the document, just like the public does, and if at that time you have some comments that you would like to send to our team, we could also provide the climate action email at Encinitas, and those will get included in the public record and considered for incorporation into the document. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I would just say, I think the devil's in the details. So, at a high level, everything sounds wonderful. It's sort of like mom and apple pie sort of thing. But it would be interesting to understand what are the concrete steps that people are proposing and how much benefit you expect to get out of them. And, referring back to Ron's paragraph here, I was just looking at the bottom of it. And, he does say, and I don't know how well I can read and move my head at the same time here, but there is, however, a very real problem with providing a decent standard of living to the world's large population and associated energy crisis. So I don't think there's a question that there's a problem. It's just the severity of it and the right balance that we need to have in order to address it. And of course, as you've already alluded, I think Patricia talked about, we're getting guidance from the state of California in terms of how they want us to act on this as well. So yeah, I look forward to looking through the details, and thanks for the presentation.
Commissioner, to clarify, Crystal and her team are always available if after reviewing the documents, more detail, if you want them back here, if there is any specific question you have, if you want another presentation about a specific piece of that document, any question that the commissioner would have, I'm sure she'll be happy to come back and give a more detailed presentation on any topic of interest.
Okay, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're moving on to action items. The first item is selection of a new vice chair for the Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission. I would like to nominate Commissioner Johnson. Are there other nominations?
No, but I'll second that.
Okay,
I've always wanted to say that.
okay. Amanda, do we need to vote on that?
Trouble. Do you mind if I do a verbal?
No, that's fine.
I'm just going to call you each by name. Commissioner Ron Medoc? Yes or? Yes. It's not working right now, yeah, if you don't mind doing it.
I vote for Commissioner Johnson.
Great. Commissioner Johnson?
It's bad form to vote for oneself, so I'll abstain.
Okay.
Chair Patricia Trouth?
Yes, I vote for Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Thiele?
Yes.
And Commissioner Templin?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Congrats. Okay, let's see. Item B, this is the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan.
Okay, this evening we're pleased to return to the Commission to present the city's draft Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. That's our CSAP. This data-driven planning effort is a direct result of the city's continued work to reach the Vision Zero goal of zero traffic deaths and serious injuries on Encinitas streets. The presentation tonight will include project background and context, sharing of data analysis results, presentation of our safety priority network, including our highest ranking priority corridors and recommended countermeasures, discussion of implementation strategies, and next steps. And now I'll turn the presentation over to Angelica Roca from Theron Piers.
Good evening, Commissioners. Nice to see many of you again, and nice to see some new faces and the public. My name is Angelica Rocha, and I'm a transportation planner from Theron Piers, the consultant team supporting the city with this comprehensive safety action plan. This plan reaffirms the city's commitment to eliminate death and serious injury on roadways in the city of Encinitas. And the goal here today is to hear feedback on the draft plan, but also receive recommendation for council adoption. So Nick covered at a high level the agenda. We've shared the draft safety action plan with you all here today. Today we'll cover some key components of the safety action plan for your consideration. I'll start by providing a project overview, then walk through the prioritization process used to identify 2 priority corridors for initial conceptual ideas. Then I'll cover implementation, which outlines the strategies the city will take to reach that Vision Zero goal. And then round out with some next steps for execution on this plan. So just to cover the project overview, I was here in October, so some of this will be a refresh. But the background is that in 2021, the city established a Vision Zero goal to eliminate traffic deaths and severe injuries on roadways. The following year, the city adopted the local roadway safety plan. This plan resulted in many great projects implemented across the city, but the state of the practice has changed since then, and this draft comprehensive safety action plan before you today represents the city's commitment and alignment with the safe systems approach, which focuses on identifying systemic safety need, then developing design, policy, and system strategies to address these safety challenges. Besides the moral imperative, we have to make sure that people can travel on Encinitas roadways safety. There are other outcomes driving interest and attention to this effort. First, by having a comprehensive safety action plan, the city becomes eligible for additional grant funding opportunities. Most notably is the U.S. Department of Transportation's Safe Streets and Roads for All, which is actually open right now and requires a adopted comprehensive safety action plan to apply for construction dollars. There are other grant funding opportunities that this opens the door for as well. Additionally, the city is interested in receiving the Vision Zero city designation, which is managed by the Vision Zero network. They outline some key things for us to include in this comprehensive safety action plan, and with this plan, the city will be eligible to apply for that designation. So just walking through how this process unfolds, we begin with gathering and analyzing safety data, which I presented to you all back in October. That analysis really highlights the key issues on roadways, and then we work to identify where the highest issues are and what strategies could be implemented to specifically address those issues. Then we package all of that and come to you today and share that draft safety action plan. So just as a refresher, in October, I shared the Safety Priority Network, and this identifies the segments of roadways that have the highest concentration of death and serious injury crashes on the network. And this approach is primarily reactive or retrospective. It relies on crash data that's happened in the past over a 5-year period. To understand safety need just beyond where crashes have occurred, we also incorporated additional data sets such as parks, beaches, schools, community centers to understand where there are other locations that we might expect other modes to be mixing, as well as where we might expect kids, seniors to be walking or biking. This approach is considered proactive, and it's really working to address issues for them to happen. I like to say that instead of playing whack-a-mole and addressing issues after they've happened, we're trying to work to identify where these similarities are in issues and then addressing them proactively. This is an approach the overall industry is taking that's focusing on vulnerable road users and working to proactively address issues. The output is this visualization that's presented here on your screen, and this identifies those high priority areas for improvements. And over the 5-year study period that we looked at, all of the deaths and serious injury crashes occur on just 16% of the city's roadway. And so this is an important statistic because it allows you to understand that our issues are not citywide. Our biggest priority areas boil down to just 16% of the network. And if we can address issues there, we can really prevent death and serious injury on roadways. So moving to the priority corridors, once we establish that safety priority network, as mentioned, which covers just about 30 miles for the city to focus on first, we wanted to take an initial step to understand where the greatest safety needs are and the types of improvements that could make the most meaningful impact. And this also helps the city begin to work to advance projects for future funding programs and opportunities. So the prioritization approach was a key component of the safety action plan, and specifically a requirement that the U.S. Department of Transportation asked for. This methodology used gives higher scores to roadways where crashes happen more often and has the greatest importance set on roadways with the most serious crashes. It's a way of making sure that we focus the city's attention and resources to places that have the most life-altering issues occurring. So 2 priority corridors rose to the top, which is presented on your screen here. I'm going to walk through at a high level what you'll see in the plan for these corridors specifically. These are initial ideas, and as project advancement continues, these projects will be brought back to the committee. But as of now, there's not a funding mechanism associated, just some initial thinking on what the safety issues are and how to address them specifically. So I'm going to share a lot of statistics and things on this slide. So I tried to add an animation to make it less overwhelming. So as I mentioned, I will walk through some of the safety issues that rose to the top for the top priority corridors, and the first being Encinitas Boulevard and West B Street. So this is essentially a long east-west stretch within the city, and I've summarized some key statistics here. First, there was a total of 89 crashes and 9 death and serious injury crashes. There are a couple of things I want to point to you in this next block of data, but 36% of crashes involve a vulnerable road user. We use this term to describe youth and seniors, as if they are in a crash, they are more likely to result in a more serious injury crash. 81% of crashes occurred at an intersection, which allows us to kind of pinpoint where some of these issues are taking place. 58% of crashes involve motor vehicles, while 25% of all crashes involved a bicyclist. I note this because this number is quite high given the difference in bicycle ridership along El Camino Real compared to vehicles. And another thing to note is that 27% of drivers involved in a crash with a bicyclist were turning right at an intersection. We also looked at citation data, which was a direct recommendation that came from this commission back in October, and found that speeding violation and cell phone violations were among the top violations on this corridor. And so once we kind of review all the data, we work to establish the corridor goals. And so for this particular corridor, we want to reduce vehicle speed, separate road users, specifically in high volume areas, improve safety at intersections, and improve wayfinding. So this is a snapshot of what you will see in this plan, and want to just kind of note that we identified both long and near-term solutions for the corridor. Near-term solutions are quick build improvements or improvements that can be made through staff work orders, and so they can be implemented rather quickly, they are efficient, and can help address safety need. Long-term improvements require grant funding or significant CIP allocation. So we work to kind of identify different strategies and steps and timelines that the city can take to execute. These near-term improvements are mostly striping, temporary materials, signal modifications that really emphasize safety at the intersections. And then lastly, just wanted to reaffirm these are preliminary improvement ideas. And once they become projects, they'll come back to the commission. So next, covering El Camino Real. So at a high level, there were 93 total crashes, 10 death or serious injury crashes. Most of the crashes on El Camino Real are also happening at the intersection, but we do see more crashes occurring outside the intersection as well. And this has to do with speeding generally. And notably, we also see unsafe speed violations and cell phone use violations as top key violations. One thing I'll just note that this stretch of El Camino Real represents 30% of all the unsafe speeding violations in the city. So this is a kind of concentrated area for unsafe speeds. And so in this case, our corridor goals become reducing vehicle speed and reducing severe conflicts by separating modes. So just making sure that people have a placement at intersections to ensure that they can travel safely. Similar to priority corridor number 1, we've identified a handful of near and long-term improvements, again, really focused on striping, signal modification, new signal hardware like reflective black backplates. There's also some temporary material suggestions, such as like pedestrian refuge islands, which can be implemented through staff work plan. Moving to implementation, this section really outlines how the safety action plan will transition from analysis and planning to action. So it details the process that we use to develop these strategies, which you'll see in the draft safety action plan, and the specific strategies that we recommend. So highlighting kind of the process of how we get to our implementation strategies, I'll just orient you to the left-hand side of the screen. The way we start is trying to make sure that this process is grounded in data-driven approach, and so we're working to develop strategies that are based on the highest impact opportunity highlighted in the safety analysis. So we began with a benchmark assessment, which really reviews the city's existing plans, policies, and guidelines that are influencing roadway safety to understand what's working, what's not, and what are opportunities to help improve traffic safety. We then moved towards a public review process or public feedback process where we reviewed the results of survey data that was collected by SANDAG as part of the regional safety plan, which happened in alignment at the same time with this effort, and then hosted kind of 2 community engagement events to understand other resident priorities. We then moved to the safety analysis part, which I spoke to earlier, really trying to understand the trends of crashes happening and contextual roadway factors that are influencing death and serious injury crashes. We then aimed to understand how our strategies align with the Safe Systems Pyramid, which is a kind of Vision Zero 2.0 framework, which draws on public health principles to effectively improve safety. We then brought this draft list of implementation strategies to the city and really worked to make sure that the strategies that are suggested in this plan are aligned with funding availability and staff capacity and resources. And the output or the outcome that you see here is the draft table of implementation strategies. And this is an exciting milestone of the city's commitment, outlining strategies that are proven safety strategies for reducing fatal and serious injury crashes, and you have the staff resources and attention to it. So just at a high level to orient you to what you see in the plan, there's a table presented, and that includes kind of each of the strategies, the responsible department, really the rationale, what drove this recommendation, whether it was a systemic safety finding from the analysis or whether it came up in the benchmarking assessment from best practices, as well as that Safe Systems Pyramid, really trying to understand if it's a educational activity or if it's more of a built environment activity, working to solve, reduce fatal and serious injury crashes along that approach. And then lastly, the timeline. So similar to the priority corridor project sheets, there are, or cut sheets, there are kind of a timeline execution on where actions will take place, when you can expect to see action on that. The implementation strategies are broken up into these 5 categories, which is the 5 kind of key categories of the Safe Systems approach. And this is direction from FHWA, who's also adopted this Safe Systems approach, and our State Department of Transportation Caltrans. So that's safe road users, safe vehicles, safe speeds, safe roads, and post-crash care. So I wanted to highlight some of the strategies that are included in each of those 5 categories. So the first is assembling a city team to more regularly process, track, and review crash data. This allows the city to more quickly respond and evaluate progress and trends that are changing over time. The next is enhancing safety technology on city vehicles and fleets, something that the city can control and action that can be taken place through city orders. Increasing the use of speed feedback signs on roadways posted 35 and 40 miles an hour. This is where we see most of the fatal and serious injury crashes occurring, and so working to develop strategies directly on those particular roadways. Under Safe Roads, we have developed a quick build policy that really works to expedite project delivery for temporary materials and solutions. And then lastly, sharing crash data across city departments and multidisciplinary agencies to support the city's goals and working with state and local and regional agencies to make sure that we're sharing and processing data effectively. So what happens next once you have this action plan? Sort of the key next steps towards Vision Zero implementation, and with this adoption of the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, the city again is reinforcing its commitment to eliminating all traffic deaths and serious injuries. Achieving this goal demands a unified and collaborative effort from all residents and decision makers. It requires a shared responsibility and accountability in how we interact with and utilize the transportation system, whether we're drivers, cyclists, pedestrians, transit riders, or decision makers. It begins with integrating near-term strategies into the city's work plan. I outlined a number of those near-term strategies, so the next steps is really ensuring that that gets folded into the city's work plan. And really aligning with other initiatives and establishes momentum for implementation. Second, focusing on kind of those low-cost, quick, and effective, easy-to-win results that really allow the city to gain quick wins and momentum. The next is long-term success of this effort really depends on embedding safety in the city's day-to-day decision-makings, and this is across departments, policies, and other initiatives. And then lastly, really strengthening partnerships and securing funding. So the city will collaborate with local, regional, and state partners to align the city's vision and goals for transportation safety by identifying and securing funding for sustained implementation. So with that, I'll thank you for allocating this time and open up to questions.
Amanda, do we have any public input?
No, we do not.
No. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll just move into asking the commissioners to comment. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, one of the things I noticed here, when we reduced speed limits the 1st of July last year, for quite a while, we noticed people driving more slowly, and I'm leading parades myself because people want to drive faster than I'm driving, and I'm only at the speed limit. What we do need, I think, is some feedback on whether this particular measure has given us any benefit in the city, or if we're just slowing people down to slow them down. I think in general, anything that's done needs some feedback afterwards, some analysis of the measure afterwards, to see if this roundabout working or not. Is this speed change working? Are those signs working, or are people just seeing too many signs and ignoring them all? So I'd suggest that there be some kind of feedback loop here. This Vision Zero is a continuing goal, and we've never reached it in this city, though we try for it and speak for it. But I think feedback will be feedback will be the thing that makes it better for us.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mehta?
Yes, I have a question for you. Well, actually, I have a question for other commissioners. I didn't know much about Vision Zero before this issue came here. I've seen it mentioned a number of times. Do you guys know very much about Vision Zero?
We had a presentation last fall, but I don't feel like I'm an authority on it, but yes.
So let me ask you, I didn't get your name, but let me ask you a question. Do you think, we have a resolution here that was passed on September 22nd, 2021, signed by Catherine Blake Spear and the rest of the city council at that time. That's not today's city council. Things have changed in Encinitas quite a bit. Maybe you know that. This resolution says that the city of Encinitas should adopt Vision Zero in order to achieve 0 traffic deaths and serious injuries on Encinitas city streets by 2028. Do you think that's possible? I'm not trying to put you on the spot,
Sure.
but I'm curious, because to me it's ludicrous, but I'm asking you.
Yeah. Appreciate the comment, or the question. I think that there are many agencies who have established goals and are struggling to meet those goals, given the fact that there are limited resources and both from a funding capacity to actually design roadways to be safe and to separate users in a way that can ensure people get home safely. And that is challenging and makes the goal very difficult to achieve. I also think because the goal is aspirational, and I think our attention and aspiration should say that we want to make sure that people can get home safely, and it's worth aspiring to ensure that there are no youth or seniors or anyone on the roadway who die unwarrantedly by using our transportation system. It's sort of a moral imperative. We have to make sure that the roadways we've designed are not working. They allow for vehicles to travel 10 plus miles an hour, more so than they're designed for. And we have many state of the practice that's changed, that's sort of told us how we can better reinforce safety and redundancy in our system that would create a better transportation network. And so with that, we have to kind of move forward and towards that goal and implement those particular projects.
So I guess that was a no. You don't think we can do this
I think
by
it's a challenging
2028?
goal to reach, yes.
Okay, so if people don't mind, I did spend the weekend reading this because it was 124 pages. We got it pretty late. I had questioned why it was so late with Abe and Amanda, but they said it was just the way it was. So Easter weekend, I took a look at this, and if you don't mind, I would like to tell you a little bit about Vision Zero, if you don't mind, because it started in Sweden, which is a country I know really, really well, since everybody in my family is Swedish, except for me, but I live there. And it's relevant.
Okay, let's be brief, okay?
Are you in a hurry?
No, but, I am, I'm just saying, let's be brief to be respectful of everyone's
Well,
time.
you may think I'm argumentative, Patricia, but the city council asked. Actually, there were two incumbents that wanted to come back on this panel. They weren't allowed to because city council wanted change. They don't want business as usual. So it started in Sweden, Vision Zero, and it was 1997. And it's actually very interesting history. They said, okay, we're not going to have any more serious traffic accidents or deaths by the year 2020. And they put that into practice. When they started, they had about a little over 7 fatalities per 100,000 people per year. In Encinitas, in the last 10 years, we have 5.4. So we're way ahead of where they were at that time. In 2009, and they stayed at 7 until 2009, and they put in various things. There were a lot of roundabouts, et cetera. But in 2009, if you look at the graph, it went down from 7 to 3.4. And the way that that happened was by doing what Commissioner Johnson just talked about. They lowered the speed limits dramatically, especially on the rural roads, where they dropped them from 90 to 100 down to 70 to 80. And sure enough, there were less fatalities, and that went on for some period of time. In the residential areas, they dropped the speed limit to 15, regardless of the width of the street. And they had speed cameras, so that nobody could drive over 15. And I can tell you it's really hard not to drive over 15 miles an hour on the street where there's adequate room and there's no traffic. But that's what they did. And I know that because I go there all the time. So then Newton taught us that for action there's an equal and opposite reaction. And that apparently applies to traffic because Sweden had a real big problem suddenly. The people in the rural areas got very upset because they couldn't get jobs because it's a long way to go get their jobs, and they started pushing back. And finally, the traffic people who run the traffic in the country who had instituted this had to put the traffic, and by the way, when they first did this, they did something very smart. In areas where they had safe roads, they actually increased speed limits so that people could get to wherever they wanted to go quicker. But it wasn't good enough because people just still they couldn't get to jobs, and they said, we're not able to access work. So, long story short, they did two things. They put their speed limits right back to where they were, They didn't have a choice. And the other thing was they said, we're not going to achieve this apparently until we're going to set a new goal, 2050. So what I'm saying, and I could spend a lot of time on this, but the real guts of Vision Zero is the assumption that they make contradictory statements. First they say humans make mistakes, but then they say we can manufacture roadways in which there would be 0 fatalities and 0 serious accidents. Well, to me, in the first place, you can't have one without the other. If humans make mistakes, they're going to make mistakes when they try to make this good infrastructure. And in our city, we have 2 cycle accidents in the last 3 years, cycle crashes that were fatal on cycle tracks that were manufactured but put up by the city. And when you think about it, there's only 1 or 2 bicycle fatalities per year. And 2 of those were in these cycle tracks. So think about the odds of that. I mean, how many streets do we have? Tons, or at least a lot. And then we also put up infrastructure with the El Portal roundabout. And we've had 17 accidents there and all sorts of destruction of property. Luckily, nobody's been killed yet. So what I'm saying is I think instead of moving towards this vision, I think what we should try to do is improve our engineering and go back to what we were doing before, only do it better. That's really what I had to say.
Okay.
Thank you, Patricia, for the 5 minutes.
Certainly, thank you. Other commissioners, do you have some comments?
I do. Thank you very much for that presentation. I would say we are not only aspiring to your goal, we might be off a year or 2 to this Vision Zero, but anyone who is moving around the city knows that it is much safer to do so. And so whether it's a sharrow, it's a buffer, it's a cycle track, we heard last week that many users of the cycle track, young and old, appreciate that construction. And I think we have to aspire to make it safer. And with your help and with engineering, we can do that. Absolutely. So thank you very much.
Yeah, hi. Wow, I don't know where to start here. Well, first, maybe I'll ask or thank Nick for responding to all my questions today in a very cogent way, and start out with some more questions. And one of them was, I was wondering if you were able to sort of separate out the data for e-bike accidents, because I am very curious about the impact of that. And I'm not expecting an answer right now, but it would be nice to know about how they contribute to that, because I think we've sort of created a class of people on bicycles that are more dangerous, they're inexperienced, they're going at faster speeds. It just scares the hell out of me when I see these kids on these e-bikes out there. And then the other question I had was, if we look at the arterial roads that you identified, and you remove the proactive elements, I'm wondering how that changes the look there. So that would be something else I'd be interested in. We talked last week about how this is a safety commission, but it's actually a safety and mobility commission. And I do think, to Ron's point, some of the feedback from the city government was to look not just at safety, but also to understand that we need to balance that with mobility. And the other reality from my perspective is that most of us are driving cars. I don't know what the number is, 95%, 97% or more of the traffic in Encinitas is on vehicles. And, the feedback I've been getting from neighbors and friends over the last couple of years is that there's more congestion now than there was before. And so I struggle with, and then when we listen, one of the speakers earlier today was talking about all the housing units that are going to be coming online and the additional people that are going to be here. It's hard for me to understand how it's not going to get more congested if we do nothing. But when I look at some of the long-term goals of this plan to reduce lanes, I just can't believe that it's not going to make things worse. And while I think it's a laudable goal to drive Division Zero and eliminate deaths and fatalities completely, I think people need to understand that every time we step out the door of our house, we're making decisions about what's safe and what's not safe. And to just focus on bicycle and pedestrian safety by itself, I just think it's a little naive. I think we need to look at all the decisions we make all the time. As a commission and as a city, I think we need to focus on safety. It's one of our goals, but it's not the only one. And so we really need to balance all of this in a way that makes sense, and also keep in mind, sort of to Glenn's point, can you force people to drive slower and safer? Maybe to a certain extent you can, but I just believe one of the things when you talk about trying to slow traffic on these major arteries is you're going to drive traffic into other parts of the city. I think it's already happening with Santa Fe. I know that when people go downtown, because Encinitas Boulevard is such a mess coming from New Encinitas, that people are already doing that. And, and that creates other kinds of issues. So I really think we just need to look at both issues here. Thank you.
Okay.
For a second. If I may ask Nick, I ran a Switter's filter looking at Encinitas and bicycle crashes from, and this is about what you just talked about, Paul, from 1st of January 22 until 12/31/24. There were 81 crashes and there were 89 victims. And the amazing thing to me was when the distribution on the Switter's graph came out for age. It was over 30 were 14 years of age or less. So I immediately tried to do everything I could to find out how many of those were motorbikes, or that some people call e-bikes, but I would call them e-cycles or motorcycles with an electric engine. Do you know, is there a way to be able to break those out and find that? Because when I ride a lot, I never see a kid 14 years old hardly ever on his bike on any of the streets.
In the reports, it doesn't specify e-bike compared to bike. That's a fact. I wonder if sheriffs can speak to any reporting details. Yep. Ben.
Hi, I'm Deputy Belzer. So when we write our reports for bikes, it's the CHP 555 form is basically what it gets translated to. It's just bicycle, and then in the narrative we clarify whether it's class 1, 2, or 3, or whether it's one of those Surons. Those are basically the motorcycles, and that's where we clarify. But even in our new report writing system, niche, it still says bicycle. It's just per Switters. They don't have a classification for like e-bikes and the class like 1, 2, or 3, or even scooters, where now the scooters are getting to be 50 miles an hour. So there's no classification with scooters either.
Well, do you have a sense of there being a lot of 14-year-old and less regular bicycle crashes over these last 3 years, or do you think it's mainly e-bikes? Just a sense. There's nothing I can hold you to clearly, but clearly we have a problem with a statewide reporting if we want to find out what's happening with e-bike crashes, right?
Just personally speaking, the crashes I've responded to, I'd say there was more e-bikes, but I also do get those road bikes and the normal pedal bikes as well. But
On the kids.
correct. I couldn't clarify the ages, but just like e-bike versus like a road bike in that sense.
I guess the other concern is with the e-bikes is bicycles going faster contributes to fatalities as well. So, obviously when you're on an e-bike, you have kids that are going faster than they normally would. And so I know we always talk about the speed of the car as being a problem, but the speed of the bike is actually a contributor to serious accidents as well. So, but I don't think we're going to get resolution there, but it really, would help. And I'm not even sure this is a Vision Zero topic per se, but I think it's an element of if you want to drive to a Vision Zero, we need to get a better handle on e-bikes. And there are some other interesting elements that are maybe beyond the scope of what the city can do around the design of cars that also contribute to pedestrian injuries as well. So, yeah. And I guess I'll just say the other thing I thought about and I talked to Nick about earlier today when I read this report was we talk about the arterial routes as having the most accidents, but it's not surprising because those are the roads we all drive so frequently. So, and I was asking Nick about, if accidents per mile or 100 miles or whatever, and philosophically Vision Zero doesn't really agree with doing that kind of analysis. But again, I think you need to look at those kinds of metrics to really understand how dangerous our city is and where it's dangerous. And I think just focusing on the numerator instead of looking at the numerator or the denominator being the number of miles driven on those roads, it kind of creates a false narrative.
Okay, I just wanted to make a couple comments. First of all, I think the document's a really good roadmap for, the city to reach our safety goals. One of the things I did notice, though, was under, let's see, it's the outreach and engagement. And I was just wondering, if we could have a little bit more information. There were only like 2 pages in there that talked about it, maybe, because I know you had like 3 workshops, right?
We had 2 outreach events. So when we started this project, the Regional Transportation Agency, SANDAG, had also been working on their regional Vision Zero action plan. And so residents of City of Encinitas had already responded to an online survey, which asked them to identify key issues across the city. So 50 unique residents participated in that survey, and then several others sort of had the ability to upvote and downvote specific issue areas. And so instead of issuing a whole separate survey, which can be confusing for residents, and also we are all over-surveyed at this point in time, we got the data from SANDAG to understand where those key issue areas are, and is one thing that we'll be adding to the appendix for the next revised version that goes to council. And starting with that as the basis, trying to understand what the initial issue areas are, we then went to Ciclovia and hosted an outreach activity there where we specifically asked residents to identify priorities and improvements that they'd like to see in the city, and there was sort of an ability to answer questions pertaining to all modes. So asking them what sort of vehicle safety improvements they'd like to see, bike safety improvements, transit safety improvements, et cetera. Got a lot of really great feedback from that. And then lastly, we then hosted a workshop with Bike Walk. They published or kind of did outreach advertising to their community to try and get folks to attend the meeting. At that time, we presented results from the safety analysis and then also shared proposed ideas for the implementation strategies, that last piece of the presentation I covered, to get a sense of whether or not they agreed with these strategies that were being recommended, or if they had some other strategies and solutions that would that they'd like to see as part of this effort. And then lastly, I'll just round out that we had a presentation here in October, which I mentioned, where we received feedback, and that sort of influenced the development of this plan as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, if you could just add a little bit more to the document, I think it, really would be well received. So, thanks. Okay, so.
At the risk of making sort of a snarky comment here, but when I was looking through that, I guess it didn't seem to me like you reached out to like Cartopia or something like that. I mean, 97% of the people drive cars, but basically the reach out seemed primarily to pedestrians and cyclist organizations. So it's understandable that you got the feedback you did. I understand you also got feedback from Sandag, but it's really depends who you talk to about these kind of issues, how people feel about them.
So let's see. Would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, Commissioner Johnson here. I'd recommend that I'd move that we recommend this for adoption to the City Council. We've given comments on many things that are tangential to the plan, but the plan itself is a good thing to start talking with at the council level. So I'd move that we adopt it.
I second.
Amanda, do you want to take a roll?
Do we have any discussion?
Oh, yeah, well, sure, we can have some more discussion. Yeah. Ron?
Okay. That's the way it works. I don't think anybody here disagrees that the idea is to lower the incidence of fatalities and serious injuries and all crashes. Everybody wants to do that. But I do think it's wrong to adopt the Vision Zero strategy, which is not reliant so much upon education of people. It's mentioned in passing. But the main thing, the main way that this is approaching, trying to do that, is by constructing infrastructure that supposedly cannot be overcome by driver error, which is an impossibility in my mind. You can try to do that, and you should do the best you can, but you can't accomplish that in this way. And what this instead allows, if we agree to the Vision Zero concept, then it's a never-ending, it becomes like whack-a-mole. You never can win, so you always are doing this new attempt. I don't really see how that's helpful. I think we could all agree that we want to have as few problems as possible, as few fatalities, et cetera, and let's improve our engineering. Let's examine the actual accidents, not just the data. Look at the actual accidents, and then we can actually make proper changes. So I'm obviously not going to vote for this proposal.
Do we have additional comments?
That's probably enough for now. I think it's probably clear how everybody's going to vote here anyway, so let's just get on with it.
Okay, so we need to vote.
I have to default to a verbal vote again. So the action is to approve staff recommendation to review and recommend to City Council for adoption.
Correct.
Commissioner Medoc? Commissioner Johnson?
Oh, yes.
Chair Trouth?
Yes.
Commissioner Thiele?
I am for it.
And Commissioner Templin?
Nay, no.
Okay, so the next agenda item is the intersection of La Mesa and El Portal improvements.
Thank you, Chair. A. Bandigan here, City Traffic Engineer. We had this item at Commission, I want to say about 3 months ago. Was it in February that we had this, or was it before that? I think it was. Last year, we received through our portal, our 311 system, requests from residents to evaluate the intersection control at North El Portal, South El Portal, and La Mesa intersection. Staff looked at a few alternatives. We had a community meeting with the residents. We presented our preliminary scenarios, received community input. The majority of the comments at that point was either don't do anything, or if you do something, make it minimal with regards to the aesthetics impact to the two intersections. But everybody pretty much agreed on the concern. What the difference was, because of the lack of serious collision history here, serious injury or fatality or anything like that, there is no major history of collisions here. The two sides had difference of opinion with regards to sides being staff side and the resident side. They had concerns that why are we even doing this? My position and staff's position was that, well, we identified something. We don't necessarily need to wait for a collision to happen to add assist. Yes, luckily there hasn't been anything, but we all agree that there is this ambiguity with regards to traffic control here. After we received input from public, we brought the alternatives to the commission. Commission voted on an alternative that we thought was close to what the residents suggested they would be open to. We scheduled a second community meeting. This time around, that option kind of morphed into a different option. So before going back to council, because of the fact that this was not reviewed by the commission, we're now bringing it back to the commission for a second review. As you can see here, the idea that was new at this second community meeting was that all along we were considering La Mesa as the main corridor where North El Portal and South El Portal were intersecting it at an angle. The argument that was made by some of our residents was that even though La Mesa seems to be the main thoroughfare corridor, but because of the fact that it's dead end on one side and the volume of traffic on the south leg of La Mesa is nowhere comparable to the South El Portal and North El Portal because of the fact that that connects to Neptune, and the residents coming from Neptune going toward 101, they all use North and South El Portal. These two have the higher volume. There was no question from residents' point of view, which does make total sense. So that shifted the design into an alternate design where now we're looking at a three-legged intersection where North El Portal and South El Portal and El Portal are intersecting each other at a Y-shaped three-legged intersection, with the two La Mesa is now intersecting the North and South El Portal. Now, this, what you see here, has very minimal paint job on the ground. Basically, we have the option of cross-hatching these triangular areas, but we don't need to. We can kind of implement it like this first, and if we see people are not following this as much, do another round of temporary cross-hatching and maybe revisit a year after people get used to it and remove the cross-hatching. Parking impact is minimal. We can keep the majority of the parking that's out there. Maybe we would need to drop 1 or 2 parking spaces due to crossing concerns and turning concerns, but even at the two gore areas on the two sides, the idea was to be able to form this curve in a way that those parkings are not lost. This is a schematic, obviously. It's not yet reviewed by commission, not yet approved by council, but as said, there's one option that the two North and South El Portals come to the intersection at a yield. The main El Portal runs free because of the limited width that El Portal has. The main El Portal, we're not stopping or yielding El Portal here. That was also something that the community agreed on, that El Portal has to run free because of the limited width available. The second scenario is similar to this, We're just stopping north and south El Portal, but the main El Portal runs free here. This would, both options, I guess, can give us the option of creating crossings from these two corners toward the westerly corner. We can have a triangular crossing, but the stop sign obviously would be much safer and more convenient for the pedestrians who are crossing from these two corners toward this red curbed area. The design, I said, the striping design on both is similar, and with that, I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have some comments?
We do have, oh, I'm sorry,
Public comment, that's fine.
3 public speakers. We have Scott Cordes, followed by Aaron Hebsche, and Kelly Hicks. And I'm sorry, Scott Cordes with time donations. From Jenny Brownlee. Thank you.
Council members, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. I was at the last meeting, and I need to apologize to Abe. I believe I got maybe a little overzealous in my presentations or my passion for what I feel about this corner. I am that house just to the right of where it says El Portal Street, not north or south. So I have a pretty good idea of what's going on there. I've had that house since 1980, 45 years. I have not lived there the entire time, but I do know a lot of the other residents of the area. I vehemently opposed the last plans because there was a stop on El Portal right in front of my house. And the problem is, and the city has done a study, but I don't think it was correctly stated even yet, the traffic is on El Portal Street going the other directions, not on north or south going on La Mesa. If I may use the overhead?
Yeah.
It's not a really good rendition. I couldn't, Kinko's wasn't cooperating, the machines were all down, and I was in a rush. The area surrounded blue, I don't know if you can see it that well. It's basically bounded by Encinitas Boulevard, Neptune, up to El Portal and 101. There are 5 ways into that area and 5 ways out. You can get in from either Encinitas Boulevard, from what's the E Street, going down the hill and back up in, or at that first red line above the knife and fork, and the one up at Marchetta where there used to be a stop sign, and El Portal, where I live. You can also get out, those are the ways in. You can get out by going up Neptune to Encinitas Boulevard or to El Portal safely. The other 2 intersections are uncontrolled, and with speed limits very low now on 101, which I highly like, the traffic backs up forever, and it can take you a very, very long time to turn out at Marchetta and down at the first intersection there, just north of that knife and fork. While the traffic speed has come down, it's no longer suicidal to turn out left there, but it's very difficult. You're going across 3 lanes of traffic to get to the first northbound lane, because there is the southbound lane, the start of a left turn pocket, and then the first northbound lane, with a ton of traffic coming off of Encinitas Boulevard or 101 North. So my point is, there's really only 3 ways to get out of there that has a traffic-controlled intersection. We don't want to push more traffic up on Neptune. It's a one-way street already, and it's designated at a lower speed limit because it's a scenic highway. The one misconception is that the El Portal Street is narrow. These streets are all the same width. Neptune is one way, and it's the same width as El Portal, La Mesa, North El Portal, South El Portal. This was designed in the 1920s, and it just doesn't work for today's cars and traffic. I don't think we have an opportunity to do a citywide change in something like that. So being that there's more traffic in and out of El Portal now, I oppose having any control in and out of El Portal, because there's a ton of cars going in and out of there, because that is where you can turn in easiest and turn out easiest from this entire neighborhood. I had made a recommendation once before to only put in some yield signs, and I'm sure you can't see that, but I'll leave this here. Only put a yield here and a yield here with no stop on, just a slope, no stop sign on here. The current plan that Abe has done, and I applaud it, is in my mind above the necessary requirement. I think you have two different choices here, basically, is either do something or don't do something. If you do something, you take on liability in an intersection that has not had an accident, but is dangerous. I live there. But I think that what we're doing with, if we go back to Abe's plan, I can, sir? Those areas, those triangles bordered by the new white line, if parking is allowed at the curb, I'm sure people are going to think parking is allowed anywhere in there. So if we have a busy weekend, beach weekend, or farmer's market, whatever else, we're going to have a plethora of cars parked at various angles in that area, which could start blocking driveways for the residents. I think it's just more than we need. My current proposal now is to, it has been since the beginning, I'm more concerned about the person, one of the persons that brought up this complaint doesn't live on El Portal and he's not attending the meetings anymore, so I don't know exactly how much involved they're on that. I had recommended we stripe the intersection crosswalks just so that people entering that area would realize, one, there's something going on here more than meets the eye. Two, it's such an expansive area versus these narrow streets. It seems like it's wide open, but if you go down any farther on all those streets, you come to where you cannot have two cars passing comfortably. One has to stack up and the other. We get to stack all the way out almost to 101 on a busy weekend because the cars coming up no portal have to negotiate with the cars going the other way. And while they had a camera up on South El Portal showing the intersection, they studied it for information. It does not show the cars stacking up on main El Portal. That's why I'm against having any control of that traffic coming in and out. If you have cars stacked up on El Portal, no one's turning anywhere off of North, South, or La Mesa. The only option then is to go up to Neptune. So if I go back to the overhead, my only recommendation at this point in time would be to, you can't see it very well, I did them in yellow even though that's not what crosswalks are, but there are curb depressions that were recently, fairly recently, installed at those corners. Why don't we just stripe that and put some red curbs right at the PCRs of those points to just bring more attention to the area that have a lot of traffic. With the underpass on 101, we do have a lot more people walking their kids to school from this area. They used to have to drive them because you couldn't go across the railroad tracks. We have the brand new nice beach, wonderful, attracts a lot of people. Great, I mean, that's what it's there for. But to me, the pedestrian traffic is the majority problem, and I think that the current plan, as much refined as it is still overkill. So if I have to vote, I vote no on any traffic control. By the way, this is not considered a traffic control. You do not incur any liability because you have not taken traffic control on that in an intersection. Crosswalks are not considered traffic control. I guess that's it. Any questions?
Thank you.
No,
Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Are you proposing any kind of flashers on the crosswalks?
Not at this point in time. As I say, it's been here since the 1920s. It's getting busier. It's always going to be. We have not had an accident. We have a lot of near misses. We have people getting out of their cars yelling at each other, but it's not a fatality scene, certainly. I'm hoping that just this would bring people a little more aware of the fact that there's a potential to hit somebody or something as you go there, and it might slow you down just a little bit. We also have, of course, have a lot more Airbnbs or vacation rentals. So between the hotel, the vacation rentals, and people just coming to enjoy the beach, driving along looking for a place to get to the beach, we have a lot more traffic than just the locals who kind of know how to drive the intersection. Yes, sir.
I was down there recently and admiring the house next, I think next year's, the one with all the surfboards and the various decorations on it.
That's directly across the street from me over at
Okay.
my neighbor's house.
And I noticed that there were a couple of ladies with a lot of little kids that were walking down the street there, and I got the impression that they might be from a school nearby. Is there a preschool in that area?
So directly across, not a preschool that I know of, directly across 101, of course, is school.
Right.
Which is also where the farmer's market is, which also brings
These
traffic.
were pretty smart kids.
I'm not, well, there is one Montessori up on 101, just slightly north of us. But there's just a lot of kids in the neighborhood. And like I say, my major concern is, while I understand the law allows you to cross the street at any point you want, I don't think that necessarily that's a good idea for such a high-volume intersection. If we designated it, we might have.
I agree with you. I think it's a very nebulous, it's a very unusual intersection, number one.
Yes,
And
there's.
nebulous with all of that open space in the middle. When I was there, I was looking at it and thinking, geez, how do people know where to go here?
There's a similar one in Swana Beach that was brought up in one of our previous meetings. I guess it was, same sort of developers. It's right where Mr. T's restaurant is on 101. If you turn in there, they have a stop sign here, 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 and here. That's what I would not like to see happen. So, again, as a concerned citizen, that's my vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Do some of the other commissioners have comments? Oh, I'm sorry.
Next speaker is Aaron Hebshe, followed by Kelly Hicks.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, Commissioners. Thank you. My name's Aaron Hebshe. We have a house down on the dead end of La Mesa, so I'm very familiar with this intersection too. I want to start by referring to some of the new council's direction, which is a focus on pavement condition index. Right? You've heard Bruce say this probably every single time he gets up on the dais, and Jill Bankston, the city engineer, shared with me some data about how much it would cost to maintain our pavement condition index at a rate of 70, and that was more than $7 million a year. And we should be looking at every opportunity we can to take out some of the paving that needs to be maintained. When you see this intersection, you see a lot of extra pavement, and this is a perfect example of how we can reduce our liability, our financial liability, while also increasing or decreasing all the runoff and impermeability that such a broad swath of asphalt creates. What I would like to see at this intersection, and you can already kind of tell because you can see these triangles extending from the intersection. I'll point it on. You can see these triangles extend out where people aren't driving. If you got rid of pavement in those triangles, you'd save the city a little bit of money. You'd also increase the amount of parking available for those busy beach days. And you'd reduce the amount of impermeable asphalt that contributes to some of our runoff. So that's the suggestion that I would like to offer the commission today. Thank you.
Next, we have Kelly Hicks, followed by Kalaya Manson.
Commissioners, I am Kelly Hicks. I had the good fortune to be born and raised within a half a block of this this intersection. And for the last 70 years, I've either lived there or I've owned property there. If you think about it, 365 days a year, I've probably been, each resident in that area has probably passed that intersection 1,000 times a year. I think I've probably been by there maybe 10,000 times or even more. And as someone mentioned earlier, most of the accidents happen in intersections. In the course of my 50 years of driving, there's been 3 accidents, all in Encinitas, all because someone didn't pay attention to the right-of-way. The problem I encounter when I come down La Mesa, I consider that to be a T intersection. Typically, when you're on El Portal, you see the right-of-way to the people in La Mesa. When I'm coming down La Mesa Avenue, what happens most often, I never have an issue with people coming down north or south El Portal. The problem is when people are coming off El Portal, rather than giving me the right-of-way, maybe I just want to keep heading south on La Mesa, they'll dart out in front of me. I've had to put the brakes on a significant amount of times because either they're not aware of how T intersections work or they're just oblivious. Maybe they want to get up to the beach and get a parking space. So what happens is when you have, like as the gentleman was saying before, lives on the corner, fine gentleman, is that when anyone's there in their car on El Portal, there's no place for anyone to go. So they're assuming no matter where you're coming from North El Portal, South El Portal, or La Mesa, you can't turn in El Portal to go toward the highway because they're there. So they go, we got to get out. I think what needs to happen, I'm really surprised no one said anything about this before, is that you have this clear line of sight thing where you have to be about 20 feet back from the crosswalk. If you do that, you're going to have a little bit of space there for someone coming off of the La Mesa or whatever to get into the El Portal and not impede things as it is now. No matter where you're coming from, if someone there's at El Portal, you can't go anywhere. You have to stop and let them get out of there. My thought is, and I'm sure I'm going to get the ire of some of the neighborhood, is that what you probably should do where they have this new construction going on, make that side of that street red curb all the way. So you have at least 100 feet where there's no parking on that side. That way you're always going to have enough room for 2 cars to pass right there. I mean, obviously, they're building 2 new houses, and they're probably 4,000 square foot houses on a 4,000 square foot lot because they have basements, they have ADUs, and maybe they have 2 parking places. That's happening in the neighborhood now. Garages are not being used for parking. It's out of control. I think what needs to happen, at least for you to consider, because I see what your agenda says to make recommendations, I would think seriously about considering having the red curbs on the south side of El Portal, that length. The new construction, and they could, I don't know how many spaces they have set up for their houses, probably 2, and you're going to have at least 2, 3, 4, 5 cars there. But if you do that, you're going to have to do the 20 feet anyway, because that's the new law for the line of sight. So if you go a few more feet, you'll have enough space for someone, if they pull over at El Portal with intersection of La Mesa, you'll have space for someone to come in and get by them. So there's not going to be a bottleneck there. I think that's the big problem. I'm inclined to want to have a stop sign there, but I'm not going to, I listen a lot tonight, and not just on this subject. I appreciate what you've been saying too. I've learned a lot tonight, but I think in this regard, think about doing that, because the problems I've had has never been for people coming down North El Portal, South El Portal. North El Portal, I mean, not to contradict it. I mean, if you want me to stop, I'll stop. But Neptune used to be 2 ways. Now it's 1 way. If you're coming up El Portal or coming down Neptune and you want to go down South El Portal to get to the highway, okay, you're going to do it. The only traffic that's going to come on North El Portal is that block in between South El Portal and North El Portal, because you can't come the other direction. So North El Portal doesn't have that much traffic coming down off of it. It'll be people that want to get and go up on it. So please consider the idea of having the red curb there so we don't have that bottleneck right at that particular corner. Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you for your time. I just actually want to make a quick comment about the 2 drawings that Abe produced. So just in terms of the stop sign, that could really impact parking in the neighborhood. And as you know, this is a location that's visited quite frequently during the summer times. We get a lot of just parking issues in the neighborhood. And so if there's stop signs, that will limit parking and probably, and other items potentially. But there's homes in the neighborhood that do not have any parking at all. So they're older properties, and they are not able to, they don't have a driveway or a parking spot. And so those families are dependent on street parking. And we kind of have a little system of where we have our designated parking in front of our homes, and so we all respect that. And then, of course, in the summertime, we're still competing for those spots if we have to run to the store and then come home. And, you know, it is a real challenge just to live there and park on the street. So more stop signs, more paint, although, you know, could be beneficial for some reasons. It just, the knock-on effects, I think, just should be considered just for the ability for people to live, you know, easily in their homes in terms of parking.
That concludes public speakers.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to open it up to the commissioners to make comments. Commissioner Maddock, do you have any comments?
Well, I honestly, but I think this is a really tough question. I didn't ever hear how many of the residents, Abe, were involved in your discussions with the people there. That's so important here.
The first meeting, I don't remember the exact number, Amanda. I don't know if you remember. I think we had about 40 people. The first meeting, 30 to 40. Yes, so somewhere there. The second one was about half the size. I think about 10, 15.
Did you get the impression that the residents were very divided on what the solution should be? Were there big divisions, or did they have a spokesman who spoke for most or all of them? Or I'm very, very wary to do anything to change if the residents don't want to have it.
This was pretty clear, and this is not specific to this neighborhood. I've been in traffic for about 20-some years now. Almost always change is the first response usually is the do nothing scenario. Like whenever we want to get a vote for any kind of a change to a neighborhood, it's almost always the do nothing scenario. This time around, it's much more legit, this do nothing scenario, because of the fact that there is no severe injury or fatality or injury collision. The only concern that triggered this was the observation of the staff, and I just heard that you've been there yourself and you noticed the ambiguity of the right-of-way, the unclarity of these two, I don't know if it's one intersection, if it's two intersections. This area that you see in the picture, the ambiguity of traffic control, we did have this question. We just lost our traffic sergeant. We don't have our new sergeant confirmed yet. I wanted to see how, maybe the deputy can help us. Like if a collision happens here with no marking on the ground, how do they decide who has the right of way? That was the main concern, that like, how do you decide? So that was it. The message from the neighborhood was clear that we'd rather see nothing, or if we have to do so. The reason that we did hear that if we have to do something, let's make it minimal, was they pretty much all agreed that there is an issue. I mean, we heard from the residents we spoke tonight that they all see this issue there. They're just the fact that the majority of the residents have lived there for a long time. They know what they're doing. They get there, they kind of look around. But if we have a non-commuter, if we have a guest, if you have somebody who is not familiar, maybe parked here because they didn't find a parking spot on 101 for any reason, then we can get into situations. Again, obviously, we've been lucky there hasn't been anything yet. But to your point, yeah, the majority said they'd rather not see anything or see minimal. That's why we had the mini roundabout options too. I don't think you weren't there at the commission the first time we brought them here. The previous, like we had like 6, 7 scenarios.
I saw the video before I was a member.
Yeah, I think I have them. I can show them to you. There were like options with a lot more striping on the ground, a lot more marking.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah. So,
can I ask one more question? Did you ever do usage data so we know where the dominant flow of traffic is and what the numbers are?
We did collect data, I believe, for the stop sign, but it wasn't all the 5 legs. I think it was right just at the El Portal. But that wouldn't answer the question of which one of these 4 side legs carries the most.
Is which?
We don't have that number that
Okay.
separates the 4 lakes.
Yeah, I'm personally very conflicted by this one because I kind of want to say yes to everybody's ideas. And I really feel like it's a local issue. And so, the folks that live there are the ones that, really should be empowered to make that decision. But, I also saw the video, and my first impression was, if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of as well. I'm not sure what the right thing to do is, but I agree with trying to do whatever the least that we need to do here. I think I also heard on the video that the sheriff at the time saying that they had never really seen any problems down there. So, whatever we do, let's not make it worse, I guess is my own feeling.
Yeah, Commissioner Johnson here. This is not my neighborhood. This is, I think, a local neighborhood issue, and if the neighbors can perhaps petition to have a particular change, then we'd be happy to approve it. But in this case, it's not clear what are the proposed changes, which one of them is going to do the best. And the do-nothing proposal, the do-nothing option is still on the table. So unless we have a strong feeling from the residents or an accident record, we could do just nothing.
Abe, do you want to weigh in on that?
So this was discussed at the committee meeting too. There is no standard here that's not met. There's nothing that's wrong here. There's no striping, there's no signage, there's no marking that would cause a liability to say, oh, you should have, we did a stop sign analysis, it wasn't warranted. There's no legal mandate for us to put anything in here. Had we had any kind of collision history, it would kind of be a better trigger to force something in to say, hey, we've noticed this. We only have that ambiguity and I guess the standard traffic law of like yield to your right, yield to whoever is first in the intersection, that sort of situation applies. And I really like to hear from the deputy. Do you want to help us with this, to tell us like, my understanding as a driver, like you get here, if somebody's on your right, you yield to them. If they're first in the intersection, you yield to them. So there's nothing in the traffic engineering standards that we absolutely have to do here, otherwise we're liable. We are on notice. We did receive a complaint from a resident or two, but nothing in my books mandates any change to the intersection, if that's what you're asking.
Thank you.
Well, what happens if two cars collide, sides, broadside, whatever? How do you guys decide who's
So
at fault?
the picture was kind of disorienting. I had to pick it, look on my phone for the north oriented. To me, in my personal opinion, I'm not. What is this, La Mesa? It seems to me La Mesa is the right of way, and South El Portal comes to a stop. Basically, has to yield to the right of way of La Mesa, and then basically that's like a new street, North El Portal. So there's that line of sight of La Mesa is just a thoroughfare, and then the street coming into La Mesa would have to yield to the traffic.
That was our original
So
design.
That's how I see it. But there's also other factors in the crashes that could occur where someone's texting or speeding or something else.
Obviously. So if there's nothing on the ground, you would assume the La Mesa as the main corridor. If somebody's coming from north and south El Portal, they would have to yield to whoever is on La Mesa.
Correct.
With or without any signage.
Correct.
So that's exactly, we don't need to put a yield sign for what the deputy said to apply. It applies because the through road is La Mesa and they're intersecting it, so they have to yield. I mean, it's confusing, but there's no mandate for me. There's nothing for me to say I have to put a yield sign somewhere or I have to put in shark teeth somewhere, anything like that. I would like to do something. What Deputy mentioned was our original design where we gave the priority right away to La Mesa, and we formed the curves in the opposite direction, basically south and north El Portals intersected La Mesa. But with the input from the neighborhood, we reverted it back. One advantage to this is we can have a better crossing area, a three-legged crossing. The previous one wasn't as easy to cross, but still doable. But then again, this is a staff recommendation. Commission has the right to say, we don't like this, go back to the drawing board, do nothing, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, well, we've had several of the commissioners kind of weigh in on this, and I would like to weigh in. I think, as Commissioner Johnson said, it really seems like it's a local issue that, the neighborhood should be making the decision. So I support doing nothing, honestly, so. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think it's probably maybe somehow if we could energize the neighborhood to come up with a consensus, that would be great. I don't know if that's possible.
I don't know
We
if
can
that's
do a
possible either.
mailer, but we usually put the do nothing in there, and I'm pretty sure the winning vote would be the do nothing, but we can certainly try it. We can send the 2-3 alternatives that have the commission's support. I mean, assuming one of these is also supported by the commission, we can send these back to the residents and see what kind of a response we get. But if we put the do nothing there, I'm 90% sure that would win by landslide.
Okay, well, it sounds like we kind of have our decision here. So do you want to move forward and send something out to the community, or we can?
It doesn't hurt if that's commission's, because, I mean, as said, with the first meeting, we had like 40 residents, the second one, we had 10 to 15. I'm not sure how good of a representation that is. Obviously, we have hundreds of houses in this area. If that's commissions, we can continue this, send a letter, ask for a vote, invite them to the next meeting if you want to, because we had 4 speakers tonight. We might get more and maybe finalize your decision at the next meeting. That's also an option.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion that we table this and get some more community input?
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
And we need to vote.
Sure. Commissioner Maddock? Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Chair Trouth?
Yes.
Commissioner Thiele?
Yes.
And Commissioner Templin?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't want to put you on the spot. I was just curious for a long time. I was like,
Okay. Moving to the next item, the Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission's work plan discussion. So last week, we had, I thought, a very good, thoughtful conversation about our work plan. And Abe, in our packet, kind of tallied up the votes. Now, the one thing that I noticed on here, we had a good discussion about Highway 101 as well, but we didn't put that on the work plan. So I think the first thing that I would like to see us do is have a discussion about where we want Highway 101, that project, where it should fit into the overall work plan.
Chair, was this something that we voted on, or?
Oh, I'm talking about the work plan that was in our packet.
Yeah, no, the item that you're talking about, the 101 conversation.
Right.
Because Jill was taking notes and I was tallying the votes up.
Uh-huh.
But this item that you're talking about, was that, like, did I miss it here, or? Because I remember, like, with the show of hand, we were kind of voting for different lines. Was the 101 item something that was voted by the commissioners?
I believe it was in Commissioner's Corner, so, it wasn't part of this discussion, but it was something that the mayor said he wanted us to look at
I
and
see.
discuss and come up with some
Okay, yeah, my only
solutions.
concern is like because we have some that have 7 votes here and tonight we only have 5, how we rank that item is a little bit of a, but if you remember, if everybody agrees it was something that mayor wanted and the council wanted, I guess it's fair to assume we will be on your work plan anyway with no matter how many votes, so let's just assume it's there. Because otherwise, I don't know how we could rank it compared to like the prioritization, because we only have 5 members out, and I don't know if the other 2 missing members, how would they vote on this item?
Well, I mean, we could table it. We do have another meeting before we have our joint meeting with city council. So we could table this inclusion of Highway 101, that project, into this work plan at our next meeting.
Do we know, Amanda, if next one will have full quorum or May 22nd? But that has to post, I believe, before the meeting. My recommendation is finalize this with the quorum that we have today. That single item, maybe to where to put it on the finalized list, we can talk about it at the next meeting if we have to.
Okay. that
Because
sounds
this, the previous, like at the previous meeting, everybody was there, and this list was voted on. I would say if you want to discuss prioritization of this list and shortening it even more, do it. And then that last item that you just mentioned, if at the next meeting we want to add it in to the final list.
good. Okay. I think that sounds like a plan. What do the other commissioners think? You good with that? Okay.
Yeah, it sounds fine, but I agree with you. I think with a 101, that's where all the bicycle and pedestrian accidents happen in Encinitas, so we should definitely be looking at that.
Yeah, I want to make sure we're addressing everything that city council asked us to address. So we'll table that. Do people have other little comments about the work plan that was in our packet? I have a couple little.
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Johnson here. First of all, Santa Fe revisions, the description, the word "for," to work with staff and community for potential enhancements to Santa Fe corridor, is kind of a weak word. I think we want to be stronger in the description. Council is asking for someone to take the lead on what's to happen in Santa Fe. It may not be right now, but it'll be a year from now. And instead of "for," I would suggest to suggest instead of "for" as a word, or to
recommend, to suggest.
to recommend. That's good. Okay. Next, Santa Fe and Crest, number 9. I think looking at the quick build roundabout on Quail Gardens Drive and Ecky Ranch Road, we haven't had much feedback on whether or not that roundabout is a success. I drive that route pretty often, and it certainly slows traffic. As a purpose, as what we want, it slows traffic. However, people get confused by that small roundabout and the bumps, and some people have gone over the central area and just driven through. I think that quick build roundabout is still, we want to review the success or failure of that. For Santa Fe and Crest, a quick build roundabout, I don't think is really suitable. A full roundabout is necessary there because of the visibility considerations, and the crest of the hill makes it difficult for people traveling through that intersection, at least going westbound. It makes them difficult to see the roundabout before they come upon it suddenly. And I think what's required for that will probably be an expensive project with some regrading of the road and a full roundabout to accommodate the vehicles, trucks, buses, students, bicycles, pedestrians. That's my opinion on Santa Fe and Crest in roundabout.
I just had a question about the process. So last week we voted on all these. Are we going to vote again on these, or like, are we going to pick? I mean, what's the process to winnow this down, and how much do we need to winnow it down?
Well, the direction we were given was to prioritize them. So,
Okay.
I thought with the way we voted that we prioritized them.
So pretty much everything with a 7 or a 6 or maybe a 5 is in, or is it just that we just give the council the list as it stands with the prioritization that we have there?
That's what I thought we would do.
Okay.
But,
Does somebody have that list? I don't have the results of the voting.
They're on here.
What?
Where it says 7, 6, whatever, that's the number of people that voted for.
Talking about this. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've seen it.
So it's really a question for all of the ones that got 7 or 6 in terms of what's the prioritization of those? Is that really what we need to figure out today, or?
I think we've prioritized them.
Okay.
So, we voted on them.
Okay.
So
So what are we trying to do today? I'm sorry.
well, what I wanted to do was to just make sure everyone was comfortable with the terminology.
Okay.
Just the way it's described. So,
Okay. Thank you.
And so I'll just go ahead and take a stab. So item number 1, we talked a whole lot about Leucadia Boulevard and needing, better signage and whatnot. And I totally agree. I think we should open this up to say roundabouts throughout the city. So any of the roundabouts that we have, I think they could probably use a little bit better signage to explain to people how to use it and whatnot. So does anyone have a concern about opening it up instead of saying Leucadia Boulevard? You could say Leucadia Boulevard in particular, but throughout the city.
No, I agree with you. It should be throughout the city. I think it's an issue everywhere. I'm looking forward to learning more about roundabouts than I presently know, because there's obviously been a lot of problems. So,
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say, and I think Commissioner Duncan said it well, is to be consistent with the signage, whatever that decision is. And then so there's a standard when entering roundabout. Obviously, the roundabouts are going to be slightly different depending on the road and the neighborhood, like Commissioner Johnson said. But I think it's very important to have consistency, and that can be signage, painting, and I would agree with that throughout the city and be consistent. If we're going to use sharrows, then we should do that. And so I agree with the signage in it. And if that is addendum to number 1, I agree with it.
I agree too.
Okay. The only other comment I had was item number 10. And we say education. I just thought we should say safety education. Maybe I'm getting too technical. And then also, on the list of items that the city council wanted us to address, they in particular said electric bikes. So under that education project, I'd like to add including electric bikes. I didn't really see it another place to put it with these other projects, but I thought it was appropriate under education.
I have a question about the education, because to me it's a little bit of apples and oranges. I don't really see why we would forego education for any of the projects. I don't think unless I'm wrong, Abe, that education would necessarily require so much of staff time that it would be taking away from any of the projects that might be ahead of that. So I'm really questioning whether or not it should be on this list at all. I think there should be a lot of education for anybody who's involved in transport, who's going to be using transport of any kind in the city.
Yeah, Commissioner Nick Buck, Mobility Manager, I agree with you. Yeah, it's definitely within my scope and in the work plan for me to be focused on education and, yeah, for all users, so to include bikes, e-bikes, and other transportation users, definitely. So I think that any involvement or any planning that the commissioners want to do, I would be involved in that, and there should be capacity to fulfill some of those education efforts.
And similar to enforcement, I see this item as a way commission directing Nick and his efforts with regards to education, like what we want to do, which areas we want to focus on, how we want to do things, kind of giving some directions to Nick's education efforts, similar to enforcement. Obviously, enforcement is happening already in the city. The fact that we're adding it to the work plan, my idea was we will have our traffic sergeant here, and commission would provide recommendations on how to focus enforcement efforts, what to do, where to go more, where to go less, how to, like which hours, which time, how to focus, kind of the resources that the staff have at the sheriff's office or at traffic division to kind of deploy those resources per commission recommendation as a work plan. Obviously, you wouldn't be educating anybody or enforcing anything. The work plan item, that was my thought. That's how I wrote the description.
So a fresh set of eyes to look at the education program and provide feedback maybe from a layman's perspective. Is that what you're talking about?
If, again, because of the fact that we cannot take 20 items to commission, we only have 10 meetings a year.
Right.
If that's a priority, I mean, we have all these other things. But if what you mentioned now is a high priority, then certainly there is capacity on the staff side to listen to you, to kind of navigate through our educational efforts based on your directions and recommendations.
Right.
We can certainly do
So
that.
it wouldn't be may not be a minor exercise because you would have to educate us on what the program is, and then we'd have to provide feedback and, so on and so forth. Okay.
That's how I see it, unless commissions see it in a different way. As a work plan item, that's what, because right now, I don't think, Nick, anybody other than council provides any directions with regards to your education efforts, right? This is more of a in-house thing that you decide where to go, what to do. Is there like an official policy or
No, for the most part,
plan?
that's how it goes, and that's how it's been. We do certainly receive input through the school district liaison committee meeting and our regular interactions with the schools to respond to their needs. But for the most part, it's staff-driven.
Yeah. Commissioner Johnson here. I'm thinking that the education probably is more something that this commission would follow rather than take the lead on. I think Nick Buck takes the lead on education. So we could drop that altogether, and then we'd still hear from the mobility manager and have a chance to get some licks in.
Well, it's the lowest priority right now, so that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah, I move to drop that from the list.
I second. Any more discussion?
I didn't quite understand. So who were you saying would be working on the education that we wouldn't be involved at all?
Nick Buck, the city's mobility manager.
Okay. So I have some specific ideas about education, Nick. I can just reach out to you. That's fine. Great.
Okay, so is the commission good with dropping off the education? Of course, we'll continue to work with Nick Buck and stay informed and whatnot, and be able to give him feedback.
I just have a couple of comments.
Sure.
Thanks, Mr. Buck. I would say, in my opinion, we are here to support your efforts, of which I think are going very well. And for example, since we're talking about Santa Fe and SDA in that corridor, as we know, there's 3 schools within a mile. And so I would say, well, how can we support educating the kids and the parents? And the parents are driving the ninth graders, maybe they don't have a license. And how can we help you? Maybe we have a task force that's selected at SDA. They come and present their concerns with a new build out there, and then we can listen to them. It'll be a good experience for the kids, and then we can actually hear what they have to say. There is a youth commission, and maybe we've had a presentation from them before, and so a lot of those kids do go to SDA. And I think the education component is part of 3 or 4 of these high priority work plan items. I think it's kind of integrated into this. We're talking about 101, the same. We're talking about the ball, people need maybe more signage and or education. But the critical part is really for the kids, where, how do they ride, the rules of the road. And we hear from the sheriff, and all people are concerned about that, e-bikes. And so whether it's number 10 or number 1, depending on how many votes we get, we all agree that it's critical to support your efforts. And so Commissioner Johnson said you're here every month to give us a report, to present. And so we're going to have to defer to Abe and how this is presented. But we need to let council know that it's a priority of ours. It could be number 10, but it's a priority, and that we want to support the mobility manager.
Okay. Okay. So we've prioritized these projects in our work plan. Is there anything else that we would need to do to move this forward?
No, we'll listen to the video of the commission after this for the next meeting, and we'll revise the description. So from what I'm hearing, other than doing some revisions on the descriptions, we're not dropping anything. We're not shortlisting this in any way, and we anticipate sending a 9-10 work plan item to council.
That's prioritized. Yeah.
The prioritized 10-liner. Okay. I think they will say it's too big, but we'll see.
He said 5 or 10.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
Sorry, just one other comment. I think we might be able to combine 1 or 2. If we're talking about Santa Fe, I realize it's the Santa Fe roundabout. I realize it's the east section, and we're going to be focusing on kind of the west section of it. But maybe that the Santa Fe corridor. I don't know if we'll get to that, because I think it's going to be pretty intense in front of the school. But maybe we can combine a couple of them. But I agree. Mayor Ellers did, want us to focus on the number that we have on the work plan, but they can, they can see how we voted here. So,
and I'll help with starting with number 1 in May. So it's technically a fiscal year 25-26, so we have to start in July. But I'll start in May to kind of save us 1 item.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is one thing that everybody should be aware of. You probably are, but we had a lot of discussion about the round. It wasn't just the Encinitas and the Hermes, but roundabouts already in existence. But we talked a lot about the possibility of a roundabout. Of course, all of that took place at City Council at Hygeia.
Mm-hmm.
But on the City Council agenda on Wednesday, there was a proposal by Mr. O'Hara, or Councilman O'Hara, for a non-roundabout solution with flashing light, pedestrian crossings, and it's much, much cheaper. And to me, it looks like a very elegant solution, and I'd be surprised if it doesn't turn out that we're not going to have to deal with that issue, which was a complicated issue, would take a lot of time. If we're only talking about the other two. The one number one there with the 7 votes is not going to be as time-consuming as that might have otherwise been.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, I think we've kind of have a good draft of our work plan. So I'd like to move on if there's no other comments. Okay. Let's see. Do you want us to officially vote on this?
If you're continuing it to the next meeting, then I guess just a motion to continue to the next meeting would suffice.
Okay. Okay, then moving on to the traffic engineer's report.
So these next 3 items for our new commissioners are usually for the commissioners to ask questions about anything ongoing in the city, our ongoing projects, the traffic log, and then the development projects update. Our LPI project, the construction has started. Our controllers are being installed. Toward the end of the month, they'll start replacing all of our controllers with the new ones. Cabinet modifications will be complete hopefully in May. And then in June, July, we'll start modifying the intersections with the new ramps and crossings and all the other improvements that come with it. Actual LPI implementation, I would say toward the end of summer, we should be able to implement the LPI. Bike emergency, it's just last stages, 2 or 3 roads left. We have Village Park, El Camino, and Saxony left with the chicanes that are to be installed on Saxony. The traffic control plans are being reviewed to start the slurry work on these roads. A permit parking program update is going to council this Wednesday with the revisions to the Muni Code proposed by the consultant. The consultant will be there presenting their report. And the traffic calming project on Coyle and Saxony. Coyle is already complete. Saxony, as mentioned, is in the works. I anticipate within a month we should be done with Saxony too. If you don't have any questions, Chair, I can go to the next item, or?
Well, yeah, just because I live in Village Park. What are you guys doing over there?
Village Park is getting some lane narrowing, some additional bike lane buffers as we get closer to the school. And then there's some modification right in front of the school where we're adding 2 narrow bike lanes just for the kids who are getting out of the school to be able to stay out of the travel lane.
Okay, thanks.
I can ask staff to send you the plans.
That'd be great.
Nothing new on the log, as since we didn't have a work plan in the previous years, this log was basically a parking lot of items that Commission wanted to take a look at or review and provide recommendation to staff. So this list stuff would get added to it, and then as they got completed, we made them gray. But this coming fiscal year, with the work plan that we'll have, this would basically I would see it as a parking lot for a future work plan. So we'll add items with the consensus of the commission to this, and then getting closer to the next fiscal year, we'll prioritize items out of this. Doesn't necessarily need to come out of this, but If there are new ideas at the time, we can add those to the work plan, or if there's enough on the traffic commission log, we can use this as a starting point of a future work plan in the future for the next fiscal year. And then our development projects updates. I don't have the staff person who is reviewing our development projects, traffic studies, but sometimes commissioners have questions about a specific development project and a traffic study that was submitted. These obviously get reviewed by the Planning Commission. They don't come to Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission. But sometimes commissioners express interest in knowing something about a certain development project or their traffic study or something that's going on without the need for a approval or recommendation or anything. But I would ask that staff member to come in at the next meeting and provide the information to the commission. This item, the development project review, is just to give an idea to the commissioner of what's going on with the development projects in the city.
Is there any interest in knowing more about that? I mean, I keep hearing about all the crazy housing developments along, yeah, or folks familiar enough with it they don't.
There have been agenda items when we get comment from the public that's brought to you, and you'll bring up various agenda items accordingly. I know that we talked about, Quail is kind of a hot spot with Fox Point, and then the new development coming in at the bottom, and Encinitas Boulevard. We haven't heard too much about Rancho Santa Fe, that project. We see that's going up, but it seems to be instigated by the community, and they get a chance to address their comments.
I would say MTSC's involvement would be more after effect, like let's say with the Encinitas Boulevard Apartments project, there is a new signal that will be constructed by the developer at the McCain Lane. How that signal operates later on with the Rancho Santa Fe and Encinitas Boulevard signal, if they're operating properly, if there's a striping changes needed, if modifications needed, that would be Commission's role. Or with, for example, the Fox Point situation at Paseo de las Flores where cars park, we can get involved if we need to talk about any kind of a striping modification there, any kind of a, I mean, there are talks about a lot of things, red curbing, permit parking. There's a lot of different ideas out there. But this document is more about along the approval of the process of the review and approval of the project where they submitted traffic, like the environmental impact, basically the review of the project during the discretionary review. If there is a question from the commission, I will ask the staff member to come in and provide the information. But the fact that there's no approval role for the commission, this goes to Planning Commission, and all of these kind of conversations do happen at the Planning Commission. There has been, I think, very rare cases where we had to kind of talk about a specific development project's discretionary review process here. There was the interest, but apparently, I remember it was 2-3 years ago where we talked about this, where City Attorney's Office said, no, this is specifically a role for the Planning Commission.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anything else that needs to be discussed this evening? Okay, hearing none, let's.
Commissioner Corner.
Excuse me. Okay. Where is Commissioner Corner? Do you want to, Abe, do you want to kind of run through Commissioner Corner?
Yeah, similarly, Commissioner Corner is where we have a majority of the commission with an idea of one individual or two, it doesn't matter. When we have support from the rest of the commission, when we want to put something on a future agenda, if we want to add something to the traffic log, like a future work plan item idea, this is basically for non-agenda items that we want to agendize for a future. That's the purpose of the Commissioner Corner. Obviously, if something is not on the agenda, Brown Act doesn't allow us to discuss it, but this would be just to initiate a future discussion.
Yeah. Commissioner Corner, as I understand it, is the part of the meeting where we can actually talk to each other without violating the Brown Act.
Not on an item that would have any kind of a, if it's like a non-reported, like if it's not on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda,
Yeah.
but we can discuss items that are not on the agenda and propose putting them on a future agenda.
Exactly.
Do we have any such?
I don't know if it's Commissioner's Corner, but I thought we were going to get some feedback on the, basically, AB, we're going to look at the data, the crash data for the 101. Is that another agenda item, or?
We will add it to the May meetings package so that the commissioners can see the Sweeters data that's available to us.
Okay.
If commission wants to make it an agenda item, I can make it, but the direction we got was to review the data and send the data to the commission to see
Okay,
which.
so you're going to send the data to us this week or something, or what's your plan?
Within the agenda package.
Okay.
With the agenda package for the May meeting, so it would be a item in the agenda package.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I'm new at this. When does
Our
the
meeting
agenda
is
package come out?
May 22nd, I believe.
Okay, so it'll come out before then.
Correct.
So I guess we can look at the data and then we can follow up at that point if we have
Yeah, if you want
questions.
Correct.
Commissioner Johnson, do you have?
Yes, I'm seeing a lot of local feedback in Old Encinitas about the increased traffic volume and parking problems generated from the Fox Point development. And I think we should possibly discuss that here when we can, and maybe have some agenda item in the future to review what the parking standards are there, because the things are out of hand there. Is any other commissioners aware of this?
I'm just aware that how many people have actually moved into Fox Point at this point? Do we have any knowledge of that?
I don't know.
No.
It's hard to discuss unless we know how many people are moving in, how many parking spots are actually the developer is providing, so on and so forth.
Yeah. What seems to have been happening here is that the roadhouse that was built, I can call it a roadhouse because it has food and beverage and I think dancing and so forth, has valet parking, and the valet parking is parking on neighborhood streets wherever they can. And it appears that not enough parking was set for that by the Planning Commission. You know, they provided parking spaces for the residents, but not for the restaurant and bar commercial development. And this is impacting the local neighborhood, and the traffic from that is also impacting Leucadia Boulevard, Quill Gardens Drive, and I don't know where else. Is it?
I read something on social media that they were actually promoting the units there as just overnights, so that it was like it was sort of being promoted as kind of a luxurious overnight. It was more like a hotel. But that's just social media, so I can't say.
I read that same report. Was it social media or in the newspaper?
I don't know which newspaper you mean. I don't read a lot of newspapers. The only one I probably read regularly would be Coast.
Coast News and the Encinitas Advocate are the ones I read regularly. Anyway, it appears to me that there's a problem there. I don't know what the public thinks of this, but we might want to, whether it's our problem or the Planning Commission's problem or the city's problem in general, it needs to be brought up somewhere.
I think it will be.
Okay, are you suggesting anything be added to our?
Do we want to add this to a future agenda as a discussion with public input?
So what do we want to, because obviously the number of parking spaces available to the public, that's already finalized and approved and the project is built. So, and we know they did meet, I guess, whatever standard. I mean, it's not my division, obviously, but they did have to meet the requirements, whatever it was, at the Planning Commission. It was reviewed. So we cannot at this point go in and say you have to add 50 more parking spaces or 100 more parking spaces. I guess I'm trying to see like
Well, they've
what we want to.
slipped the camel's nose under the tent by allowing the liquor facility, restaurant, entertainment venue on a housing element site, and then by using valet parking to park up all the open parking places on nearby neighborhoods. And it looks like it's getting worse to me rather than better. There's also some traffic concerns regarding the intersection of Quail Gardens Drive and Leucadia Boulevard related to this, and I think that traffic kind of echoes down to the Interstate 5.
I guess the question is, would it be in scope for this commission? And if so, what's the exact request?
The exact request is to have a public forum where people can speak to what's happening, and then we can recommend to the city council to further investigate.
Okay.
And I'd like to have that put on the agenda, so I so move.
Okay. I think we need to have two people approve it.
I think a simple majority, yes, but to make sure the motion is to use the platform of the MTSC as a community meeting platform for public to come in and provide their feedback with regards to the parking operation at Fox Point. So we have to invite the community within a radius of Fox Point to come in at the next or future commission meeting to provide their input. Is that?
That would be appropriate.
Do we want to have this as part of a regular meeting, or do you want to maybe have a special meeting?
I think this might
I'm
be
guessing
a
there'd be a
regular
lot of
meeting
feedback.
item, unless there aren't enough chairs.
Yeah, the reason for this is like the whole idea of the work plan was to make sure we are prioritizing commission's efforts. So if this is going to be one meeting out of the 10 meetings of the year or 12 meetings of the year with our special, so 10% of the commission's energy, I think this has to be something on a work plan. This can be an item not specifically to Fox Point. This can be commissioned to evaluate the parking situation arising because of the lowered state parking mandates and identify opportunities to improve the situation. Like there are already talks about wherever we're building, again, I'm not condoning or supporting or saying it's a good or bad, I'm just talking about ideas. Wherever we're building a development, make the area around it a permit parking zone without including that specific development so they cannot park in that area. Again, if it's legal, not good, bad, I'm saying there are ideas like this can be a work plan item for the commission to look into all these developments are being built in the city with less than above average parking requirements. What can we do to fix this? If we can even, like just brainstorm and think about options.
Well, it's not just the parking, the traffic. Remember, when the Planning Commission approves something, they base it on complying with state law. And some apartments, though they may have one parking place, they may have a number of residents in the apartment, each with a car or whatever. And
I just think the problem, Commissioner Johnson, with that, at this point, these are all huge problems. And because of the way that all of these projects have been forced into Encinitas without people's consent, and we know they're happening, and we know that people have tried everything, they're trying a lot of different approaches to this, but there's not too much clarification on a number of them. In my neighborhood, there's the Goodson project, 270 units. Nobody knows what the traffic situation is going to be. Everybody is apprehensive and worries about what it's going to be, but it's just premature, in my mind, to start discussing that before people start moving in and you see what's going on. I mean, it's the Planning Commission's responsibility, it's the traffic engineering's responsibility, it's the City Council's responsibility. By the time it gets to our point, I think there has to be more clarification. We can spend an immense amount of time and get nowhere, really.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I think we need to focus on the 10 items that we voted on. There were seven of us here. I think they're very good items for the work plan. And the parking situation, granted, can be difficult. It was brought to us at one stage because of Via Molina with the permit parking, and it may or may not come across one of our agendas, but it's definitely going to be happening. But I think we focus on the 10 items, and those are excellent items, and they'll be enough for us to.
Well, since my motion does not have a second, I guess it dies.
Well, ask you a question, Abe, on the question of the data on the South 101 South Beach area that came up. It wasn't clear to me. Somebody, I think it was Commissioner Duncan, that said something about, well, maybe you should go back and we should find out the data you have. And on all of my attachments, I had covered, I thought, pretty much all the data was there. Do you have additional data? And I've heard a rumor that there might be video coverage that would show us perhaps even before and after the installation of the cycle track. Do we have video coverage?
I'm sure we have video after. I don't think we have video coverage before, because when the project was launched, it was right in the middle of COVID. No, with regards to the collision, I think everybody was on the same page with regards to the sources. Pretty much all the formal data that we have for collision comes from Sweeters. I think the concern that came up from the commissioners, I don't remember who specifically, but was that some of the data that you presented was mixed with different sources, and the commission basically wanted to just see what's formal on Sweeters. Now, obviously, I'm not questioning the validity of the data, from the other sources that you received, but that's the only thing that I'm going to do. I'm not going to verify what other people at different platforms are saying. I'm just going to bring what my official estate database says, that there were this many collisions, these were the reasons, and there are this many collisions after it was built, and these were the reasons. That's my plan for bringing the data to the commission, which I believe we did about 2 years ago, but obviously after that we had the fatality over there at that location.
Okay, I mean, that's fine. We can have that discussion when you come back to the commission with that. Is there any way that the video data or the video coverage could be reviewed, even by volunteers, perhaps, so that we save the city money? That would have to be an agreement on the different volunteers that be involved, because one set of volunteers may not trust the other set, for example. But I think that could be worked out. I think people might be amiable to that, so that we could actually see how many people and which people are using the cycle track and how many aren't. And the reason I bring it up, a colleague of mine or a friend of mine, or a person who spoke here at the meeting, took it upon himself to spend the morning. He went down there. It was Saturday morning, nice weather, perfect day for families to go to the beach. There were 99 riders. Let me see, 99 riders, 50 were in one group. They all took the number 2 lane, so he threw that group out. That left 49. 40 ended up taking the number 2 traffic lane. 9 used the cycle track. That's just an anecdote, it's just a photo. But if we could get the video, that might be helpful and be able to look at a longer period, much longer period of time and be able to, because we had a lot of people, there's very organized people that really want to have the cycle track there, but we have a lot of people that are being forced into traffic that would rather not be there. And they're not as well organized, but I think that they need representation. I'm trying to provide some of that for them. And I don't, that's nothing to admit, that's just a fact. But I think one way to find out is who's using what. And if we have video, I think we should look at it.
No, absolutely. No, I understand what your concern is. I think that the reason that you initiated that commissioner-initiated item last month was that, again, if there is interest as an individual, I mean, I'll be more than happy to kind of work with you on any kind of a, but if it's going to be something that the commission wants to take on, I think we agreed that it has to be, on the work plan and the commission has to decide and vote for it, which didn't look like from the last meeting that there was enough interest from the commission to consider this a specific work plan item. But on the side, we can work together and we can see what we can do if you want to work as a representative of that specific group that you're working with. We can certainly work together, see what we can do to provide you more data. I'll be as helpful as I can be.
Well,
But not on a.
Maybe I can ask the commissioners if there's any interest in trying to arrange a review. And it wouldn't necessarily have to be the commissioners, but if there were commissioners who wanted to participate, that would be wonderful. But as a way to find out what's actually happening down there, because everybody can see for a few minutes when they're there, but nobody's actually taking the time to take a look and say, well, what's happening on weekdays? What's happening during the summer? What's happening on the weekends? What happens during the winter?
Well, I think we definitely need to have more of a conversation about it. Again, it was something that the mayor identified that he wants us to address. So I think at our next meeting, we need to define it and put it on the work plan. That's what I would recommend.
So you're seeing it as part of the, which makes sense. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're seeing it as part of the larger look at the 101.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great to me.
So which part, just to clarify, which part of the 101 are you talking about?
Well, I think we need to discuss that.
Oh.
So I'm assuming it's pretty much the 101 going throughout Encinitas, the whole
Are you
length.
talking about all the way from La Costa Boulevard to Slaughter Beach?
So this would be a potential project that would be a subset of that, Ron. So it's on the work plan, but it would be sort of like, maybe there's a committee that we need to form to look at this particular, but maybe there's other projects along the 101 that we also want to look at.
And again, we can discuss it in greater detail.
Fine with me. But I think we all are aware that the problems that we'll be looking at are very different depending on where you are in the 101.
Well, when we meet again, we can narrow it down. If there's only a certain piece that we want to move forward with on the work plan, we can do that.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Glenn.
On education. My name's Ron. Sorry for you. I can come off very aggressive.